Hi, everybody. I'm so happy you guys could join me. I am going to talk with somebody that I really admire, Rachel Holland. She has a new book out that I think she probably never imagined that she and so we're going to talk about both of our books, I think. Let me see if I can find her in here. And so I'm so excited that you guys, oh, there she is, could join us today. Her new book is out this week, and I'm going to talk with her. Thank you all for joining us today.
Hi,
how are you? I love that we talk in unison. Hi, Rachel. I'm so happy that we could do this.
I know. Thank you so much for wanting to hang out with me.
Of course, I'm dying to hang out with you, and I'm so interested in your new book. I got it 2 nights ago, and I really couldn't imagine. The first paragraph sort of took my breath away because
Right.
I feel like some of your other books, maybe you could, if somebody said you're going to write a book about this, it seemed like, oh yeah, that could work. Right. But this might be something that you never thought you would write about. So talk to me about the genesis.
Yeah, so we went into quarantine for our company and our family here in Austin in March. And the first couple weeks in quarantine, I think like everybody, I was, had a ton of anxiety. I was really afraid, like nobody knew what was going on. And as I started to come out of that, I was editing the book that was meant to come out this year. So I'd already written my book, it was meant to come out, and that was a book on health and body image and the way that women sort of perceive themselves and their worth. But when I write, I tend to write with a lot of humor and a lot of levity, and I'm really irreverent and silly. And as I was editing that book, I just felt like this is wrong. This feels so tone deaf, and to sort of bring out something funny when the world is struggling so much. And so I started to think about what I would want to talk about if I could say anything to readers. And I have gone through crisis and grief many times in my life. And so I thought, well, I have some thoughts about how to navigate hard seasons. And so I began to write that book. And in the first edit, my marriage ended. And I really I thought about not putting the book out at all because I knew there was no way I could bring out a book on grief or hard times and not acknowledge this thing. And so I struggled with it and then thought, my work has always been honest. Whether you love me as a writer, you hate me as a writer, I am always showing up as my honest and authentic self. And so I have to tell the truth. So I just sort of took the bull by the horns, and from the very beginning in the prologue, just acknowledged that this had happened and this is one of the hardest seasons of my life, and did my best to talk about that in a way that was respectful of this man I so care very deeply about, who's the father of my children. We're still a family raising these kids together. So it was pretty brutal, honestly, Jenna. But I believe we can do hard things, right? I think we as a society are all doing hard things. And so I'm just going to keep moving forward, even if I'm kind of limping along right now.
Yeah, no, I really can't imagine grieving in that way when our country is also facing a pandemic, facing news that is filled with heartbreak, and many people are hurting. People have lost their jobs. We are a country that feels divided and polarized in a way that hurts, people.
Yes.
A lot of hurt. So then to have your own personal hurt must add to it. But then to decide, I think it's really brave and really interesting that this book had several iterations and you just thought, like, no, this is the truth. I'll rewrite this. But talk about like the layers of this, the layers of hurt. And I think a lot of people probably have their own personal battles when we're also experiencing such a public hurt.
Yes. Right. I honestly, I think, this is my version of it, but I think all around the world, and definitely here in the US, people have their versions of they've lost jobs, they've lost businesses, they've lost people that they love. You know, our healthcare workers, our first responders, our teachers who are trying to navigate this wild world that we're all inside of. I feel like we all are really going through it in our own ways, and we're going through it collectively, and we're also going through it as individuals. And it was why I really wanted to write something. I thought, you know, nobody knows how you are supposed to respond to a global pandemic in 2020, but there are a lot of tools and information about how you could respond to the side effects of that. There's information about how to deal with anxiety or fear. How do you have courage? How do you reach for joy even when life feels really sucky? Like, there is information about that. And so I just thought, if I could try and put that into one spot, if I could put it into this book, then maybe it would be helpful to people.
I mean, it will be helpful. And I thought, I think it's really interesting because grief is something we will all face. I happen to have a book out right now that's about losing people that I love. And so the fact that we both have these books that
Right.
I actually didn't really anticipate writing either. It was supposed to come out before the pandemic. We both have these books out about grief in a time when a lot of people are grieving even simple things like our old lives, you know, that we
Yes.
used to do, coworkers that aren't in the buildings with us. It's
Yes.
really interesting. And I wonder, what did you learn about grief, about saying goodbye to maybe one chapter of your life while starting a new?
I think I had this experience a couple weeks ago where, so I lost my older brother when I was younger. I lost my older brother to suicide, and it is a really like keystone event in my life. This loss and what that process has been like, and I write about it in this book, and I've written about it in others. But about 2 weeks ago, I was making a green smoothie. I make one every morning. I was making a green smoothie, and I only have two things of my brother's. I have a ring of his, and I have an old t-shirt that was his favorite t-shirt. And for years, I kept that t-shirt in a box in the closet because I was so afraid of something happening to it. And then I thought, man, this is not really honoring of him. You know, you should bring that t-shirt out. You should wear that t-shirt. I wear it all the time. And the other day I'm making green smoothie, and I'm opening a new jar of almond butter, and I open it up, and when I open it up, the almond oil that sort of had settled at the top spilled all over the t-shirt. And I knew as soon as it happened that I had ruined the shirt. And there was a moment, I mean, I made like an animalistic sound because my kids were like, "What's wrong, Mom?" Like I was so upset. And then I could hear him laughing. Right? I could hear my big brother laughing in my mind. I could imagine him here with me, and I could imagine him being like, "Oh, little sister, still a klutz. Like, you're drinking this disgusting smoothie." Like, I could hear him making fun of me, what he would do if he was standing in the room. And I thought, man, grief is an evolution. That's what I've learned. I've learned that there are times where, you know, closer to his loss, where if I had spilled, I stained the shirt, it's forever stained. If I had done that to one thing that I had left of his, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it would have brought me to my knees, you know, and I know that you have experienced the loss that you have. And I'm sure that closer to losing them, like that it's so visceral, right? And that pain, I think, when you lose someone you love, I will miss my brother until the day that I go to heaven, right? Like, I will miss him for the rest of my life. And I'm sure that you will miss the people that you love, but it changes and it evolves and it becomes something different. And that has taken me a lifetime to learn.
Yeah, it really does. And I think one of the ways that we process grief, and we can all do this, is by writing. And the other thing that I just thought, Rachel, and by the way, we're talking about Rachel's new book, Didn't See That Coming, Putting Life Back Together When Your World Falls Apart. One of the things, a lot of people have asked for the title. That is the title. It is out. It was out yesterday. Is that right?
Tuesday.
So out. You can get it from your local indies. You can get it wherever books are sold. So, Rachel, you know, public grieving is hard. Like, that's what my grandparents taught me, and that I write a lot about in my book, is that the world knew them. There was
Right.
public grief that I had to learn to navigate. And I think also the realization that it's going to happen again, multiple times was
Right.
hard for me. But also there's this beauty in it. And you're
Mm-hmm.
grieving, I'm sure, your marriage, this marriage
Mm-hmm.
that you've written about now over, on your blog. You have a social media, a network of humans that are invested.
Right.
When your marriage was ending, was there a part of you that was like, oh my gosh, but what are people going to think? How about this team that's, talk to me about that. And grieving
My
publicly.
yeah, my concern, I think, like probably a lot of people in this situation, is the biggest concern is for the kids, right? And and it has added layers because um the pain that it would cause our kids, but also that our kids would go to school with other kids whose parents follow us and maybe would say something, and what does that feel like to them? And so there are added layers to that. I don't think, I knew that it would be upsetting to people. I knew that it would be upsetting because I also, like, I'm still upset that Miranda Lambert and Blake Shelton broke up. And that was like, I don't even know how many years ago. It's so ridiculous. I know what it is to get invested in people that you see or that maybe you admire. There's something about them that you sort of gravitate to. So I know what that feels like. I, what I think was shocking to me was the people who said, there was a lot of backlash that I was really surprised about. And there wasn't backlash toward him, which I think is very interesting. There was backlash toward me as a woman, and other women mostly, who would say, she's fake, like she was pretending to be in love, their whole marriage was fake. And I just thought, like, this is crazy that you would presume that someone's entire life and all of the layers and all of the pieces because you follow them on social media. And I actually think that this is the most authentic thing I've ever done, because making a choice that I know to be the healthy choice for our family, for my children, and for me, is, even knowing that there would be backlash, and even knowing that people would be upset, and even knowing that it hurts the brand or whatever that is, I think is one of the most honest things I've ever done. So, I think probably the hardest part about grieving publicly is I do feel a responsibility to my community. Many of these women and men have been readers or followers or what have you for 10 years. And I know that there are people who have seen me only sort of acting from a place of strength. And so I really struggled with, how do I show up authentically, and how do I say, man, I am really having a hard time right now, but also how do I keep showing up for them? Because that is really important to me. So that was the toughest part to navigate, and I think is still really difficult to navigate.
I think it's such a shame that we are in a place in our culture where even if you do share your life, which is what you've chosen to do, and I know that in itself is probably kind of a tricky choice, but it's, your journey, and you've already written these books about your marriage and your love and your children and all of this, that when we share our truths, there can be backlash to it because
Right.
we just never know anybody's public pain.
Absolutely.
So because so many people are feeling hurt right now, what are some practical ways that we can grieve? Talk to us about what you did, what you write about in this book that helps us find peace.
Yeah, so I think that one of the things I'm most proud of in this season and this year is that I haven't rushed past my pain. And I think that earlier in my life, I would have ignored it. I would have worked and pretended it wasn't happening. I would have had vodka and tried to numb out. I would have eaten. I would have done all sorts of things rather than deal with the actual way that I was feeling. So for me, I have really allowed myself to feel it. If I'm angry, I'm going to let myself feel angry. If I'm sad, I'm going to let myself cry. And I think that that is one of the most important things that we could do right now as individuals, is allow ourselves to feel that there are parts of this that really suck. What I think that we tend to do as humans is that we compare our pain. And so we say, well, this thing really hurts me. Like, I lost my job, but that person lost their house, right? And so you almost shame yourself for feeling sad about something. And I think that you can hold both of those things. You can have empathy for someone else's pain while also allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel about it is number one. And then the other thing is that it is possible, and I think it's incredibly healthy to reach for joy, even in hard seasons. You know, I have a friend who's going through a similar situation to me, and I was chatting with her about this, and I said, here's what I know going through a divorce. I know that there are going to be days where you struggle to get out of bed. And when you're crying, you need to let yourself cry. But then there are going to be days where you're with your kids and they tell a joke and you guys are laughing, and man, you need to hold on to that joy with both hands, because there's a good chance that the tears are going to come again. And I think that we have this incredible ability to hold both joy and pain simultaneously. It doesn't have to be one or the other, and you don't have to sort of mute one out. I think that it's possible to really grasp both of those.
One of the things that I wrote about was my children's ability to heal me, which I know it's not their job, but
right.
I couldn't get over the beauty of watching my little girls' hands holding on to my grandfather's hands, for example, and them singing Jesus Loves Me together. That is a memory I will never forget, because there's this newness, this optimism and joy that comes with being a child. And then at the end of life, there's, you know, a similar optimism. And
right.
that was like, that healed me in so many ways, watching them. And I wonder if, and I know I'm saying this all with the understanding that we're not leaning on our children to heal us.
Sure.
They do, that you can't help it. And I sure. Many of you in this season of hard times for all of us have found joy in our children.
Right.
How do you find joy in your children?
Right. I think that for me, they are the touchstone, right? I remind myself of this, and I've done this for years. I don't know if you ever feel like sort of working in the public space, and you know, and you've been in that most of your life, right? So the things that people say or comments on social media or whatever, or something doesn't go right, you try something and it fails, like whatever that looks like for us as individuals. And what I always remind myself about is like, are they here? Are they healthy and good? Then I'm good. Because at the end of the day, that's my real life, right? This is a beautiful thing that I get to do. I get to write books and have this platform and do this work. This is a beautiful opportunity that I'm blessed enough to have. But I don't know how to explain it, and I don't want it to sound like I'm like disingenuous, but I don't think of this as like real life, right? Like, I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to take off my bra. I'm going to wash off this makeup that someone else put on my face. And I'm going to go make dinner for my kids. And we're going to watch a movie or play a game or go outside and like kick the soccer ball around. That's my real life. And I think for me, if I start to confuse sort of this public persona with my real life, who I really am, that's where things start to make me feel anxious or discontent, or I'm chasing or pursuing the wrong things. So the healing for me as a mom is like, this is my greatest calling. And it doesn't matter what's going on out there. If we're here at home, we're safe, we're super freaking blessed to be able to, you know, be safely at home right now and having dinner together as a family. That's it.
Yeah.
That if that's good, everything's good.
I think what you're saying is that your priorities, like, you know where your heart lies, and that
absolutely
not taking for granted your work, which you also, I'm sure, fills you up in many ways, but that the priority is in these little beings that give you, you know, most of your joy. And I feel like so many of us find joy in simple things. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but after writing this book, and we're talking about Rachel's new book. It's called Didn't See That Coming, and I don't think any of us saw 2020 coming at all.
Right.
Back together when your world falls apart. Rachel, how do you feel like your life is now? I mean, Rachel's writes about her marriage ending, about facing grief head on, not running away from it, which I think is a really brilliant way to be. But how is life now, and where do you find joy?
So I would say life's okay. I've tried to be really honest in the season that excuse me, the season that I am in. I've tried to not say like it's great when it's not, because I think that's so dangerous. I think women do it all the time. We want to make other people feel comfortable, and so we don't admit when we're having a hard time. It's a hard time. It's hard to bring out a book like this, to be honest. It's hard to talk about it. I am an entrepreneur. I've owned a business for almost 17 years. It's a really hard year to own a business. So there are things that still cause me grief and are still very difficult. And what I think is important for my audience is, and maybe for yours too, is just this idea of that life is hard, but man, I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to stand up and go again. And I think sometimes we get, we think about bravery, and we think that being brave is like someone in a movie, that it's a warrior and they're doing all of these things. And I think right now there are millions of people all over this country who are doing incredibly brave things. For some people, getting out of bed today was a brave thing for them to do. Showing up for their kids was brave. Trying to figure out distance learning was brave. Like going back to the hospital to work again today, knowing that you're putting your own health at risk. Like there's so much bravery. And I just want to encourage people that you do what looks like bravery to you, right? And so for me, practicing courage right now is just, how do I keep showing up? How do I be the best mama I can be? How do I be the best leader I can be? Some days that's going to look awesome, and then some days that's going to look like, well, I'm here. So yeah, that's the truth. That's how I am right now. I'm not great, but I will be again someday. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep walking through this journey and down this road. And I'm going to do my best that as I walk, that I'm going to encourage others, because like you said at the beginning of this, the media and social media right now, it makes me cry. Like I literally on my Instagram yesterday, I was crying because there's so much fear. There's so much fear. There's so much anxiety, and it feels, it hurts my heart when there's already so much pain and so much stress for people. And so, for everyone who's watching this or who will watch it today, I would just say, I know I sound like Pollyanna, but be a light. Be a light in a world where there's so much divisiveness and so much anger and anxiety. Like, put good stuff out into the universe. Like, share a cat picture. I don't care if you have a cat, go find a cat, go put a cat on the internet. Like, just put some goodness out into the world and keep doing that, because I think we have to be reminded that there is still good here, and there's still beauty here, and this is still an incredible country with amazing opportunities, and there is goodness in this world, and we have to be the people that keep pushing it out there.
And there's such goodness. I mean, I think you and I both have gotten to travel across our country.
Yes.
I mean, I feel so privileged that I get to tell the stories of so many awesome teachers and educators, so many moms and dads. Just the fabric of our country is the ordinary, extraordinary people who make it so awesome. And it's so funny because, and I promise this is it, but you can feel that, you can see that. And I think one of the things that you said that broke my heart today is that, people write, when you are sharing your darkest days, people can still write it's dark, but anyways, so people could add cruelty to pain. And I read something that I think is really true. It's that, nobody, if you came to and said to a person that you'd never met, listen, I'm going through this dark time, it's really hard. It would be really hard for somebody to say to you, well, I mean, look this is your
Right.
fault, or whatever the meanest
Right.
thing is. But because of the internet and the protection it allows for kind of our worst and sometimes our best selves to come out, people feel like they can write these things that really hurt. And I think one of the reasons why they really hurt is when you put this out there, your deepest fear is, oh, couldn't I have done better?
Yes.
I should have,
Yes.
this is my fault. Like,
yes.
That's what we say to ourselves when we're being
Right.
cruel to ourselves.
Right.
And to have somebody add that later
Right.
and say it to you is like a heartbreak. So how can you sort of lead people to be better?
I mean, I think, well, the first thing is, honestly, I don't know if this will go in one ear and out the other, but they're real people. Like, whoever it is that you're commenting on, I think that it's sort of become the game with social media that people think like, oh, how can I counteract this? How can I make this a debate when the person wasn't even trying to debate the topic? And I think you do have to remember that there are real people on the other side of that screen. And it's a great test. If you wouldn't say this to someone in real life, then don't say it here. It feels like we have to be really conscious of what we're doing. I would also say, if you're consuming social media and it is giving you anxiety, if it's just stop. There's no law that says that you have to see what's going on Instagram every day. And I've absolutely taken breaks from it because it gives me anxiety and I live in this world. So my feed, the other thing is you can edit your feed. So edit your feed and who you follow. If you need to just mute people because you don't want to unfollow, but unfollow who you can, mute who you need to, so that you're filling your feed with what kind of content you want to see, so that you're not sort of being forced to consume things that are giving you anxiety or making you feel worse. I say this all the time about women and how they feel about their own body is when they're struggling with body shame or body image. I'm like, okay, what are you following online? Because if you are filling your feed with women's bodies who are nothing like your own, well, then of course you're going to go through your day seeing images that tell you that there's something wrong with who you are. So you are in control of what you consume. And if it's making you feel anxious or it's making you feel sad or angry or whatever, don't consume it.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right. And I think, when I first had Mila, my oldest daughter, the first story I did on the Today Show was about the brain of our children and how when parents are constantly looking down, which, I mean, we're on an Insta live chat right now. So, but I'm at work, my kids are at home.
Right.
Constantly looking down. What it says to our children is you're not interesting. Like that message to our kids, you're not interesting enough for me to look up, really breaks my heart. So I think you're right that maybe a little space, and if you notice yourself, which I do, clicking constantly and not even knowing what you're doing. Like I'm like, wait, when did I go to Instagram? I don't even remember. It's a good choice to sort of to take a little bit of create.
Absolutely. Space. Also, have you watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
Yes.
Man, if you guys are watching this and you are a parent, you need to watch that documentary. I mean, you need to watch it even if you're not a parent, but
it didn't change everything. I mean, it shows that really we don't have much choice.
Right. And we've all, I think, been saying that for like the last couple of years, but the last year especially, everyone's been like, what is going on in this country? Like, when did people become so hateful? When did it become so divisive? I grew up in a very Southern-minded, homogenous town, right? But even where I grew up, you would have Democrats, Republican, like everyone would, you were just like, okay, that's your opinion, but we can still be friends. We can still be neighbors, and everything has felt so divisive. And then you watch that documentary and you're like, oh, this is why.
I get it.
This is crazy.
Yeah, I know. I wrote too about the fact that what I miss about my grandparents is that even though they had views that were, one way, they would have friends with tons of views, different ways. And even in their own marriage, they disagreed on pretty big issues.
Wow.
And yet they discussed it with like love always being at the center of the conversation.
That's awesome.
I miss that so much. And I think, but I also don't think it's dead. I think it's something we can,
Agreed.
we can all cultivate in our own homes. And
Agreed.
the way to do it is to know, okay, am I coming to change your mind, or am I coming to learn and listen and
right.
And
seek to understand instead of being understood. I can't remember who said that, but
yeah,
it's so real.
It's true. Well, Rachel, your book is really beautiful.
Thank you.
How moved I was reading only for an hour, and I'm going to read more. Rachel's new book, Didn't See That Coming, Putting Life Back Together When Your World Falls Apart, is out now. I suggest you purchase it from your local bookstores because
yes, yeah, all the indie stores, absolutely
need it. And I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for putting.
Thank you.
First.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jenna. Have a good day.
Nice to talk with you. You too. Bye, guys.